The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still life of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry armed women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
Hey everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome to Freedom Inc.'s public forum. We are going to be discussing some very important questions for our community tonight. My name is Ananda Deacon. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a community power builder and mutual aid lead with Freedom Inc. And I'll pass it on to Lisa to introduce herself as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Yaya, and my pronouns are she, they, me. I am a community power builder with Ananda as well, and a mutual aid lead at Freedom Inc. Back to you, Ananda.
Yeah, so we are also joined by Janae Thompson, who is she, her, hers. She is also a community power building lead and a mutual aid lead. She is our tech tonight. So hey, Janae. So thank you all so much for coming to this event tonight. This is a public forum to invite the community to ask questions of the candidates for this April 6th election. We invite you all to submit your questions through the bit.ly link that will be dropped in the chat, or comment on the Facebook Live with any question you want to ask of these candidates. This is a candidate forum in which we have invited districts 9, 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18. All candidates have been invited, but not all candidates were available. Freedom Inc. is a nonpartisan organization. They do not endorse candidates. Any candidate invited tonight is not to be considered endorsed. So now I'll pass it back to Lisa for our grounding statement to set the tone for Freedom Inc.'s mission and vision tonight.
Thank you. So many of you know what Freedom Inc. is or what we do. but I'm just gonna give another context to why we chose to do this forum. Freedom Inc. is a Black and Southeast Asian nonprofit organization. We work to end violence in our communities. We believe the best way to do this is to work with survivors of said violence to improve the conditions of everyone in our communities. Our community members are directly impacted by issues such as policing in schools, housing, and food insecurity, as well as being impacted by US militarism that has caused forced migrations and deportations of people around the world. We have seen these heavily impact on our BIPOC community here in Madison. We see local elections as an opportunity to educate our people about local governments and how they are able to advocate for themselves to be people who can make changes directly in their lives. We also see this as a way to empower our people that are capable of being their own agents of change. We know that the white supremacist system that kills our people, locks our people up and deports our people, whether it be the past iteration with Trump or the current version with Biden, all of these must be dismantled. We continue to fight for the power and resources our communities need to thrive, such as the mutual aid efforts, grassroots community-led campaigns, and advocacy efforts. Directly addressing the physical and material needs of our community. As Freedom Inc. Has been fighting for over 15 years, we must continue our momentum. We must hold these systems accountable to our demands. So with all of this being said, we want our communities to know what other candidates have to offer for our communities and on these issues as well.
Thank you, Lisa. And now we will be joined by a representative from Freedom Action Now, Manka, who will speak a bit more about Freedom Action Now's mission and vision.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to join you all representing Freedom Action Now, which is a political affiliate of Freedom Inc. In very much the same ways that Freedom Inc. builds power through providing direct services to folks most impacted by violence in our communities, doing leadership development with those same folks, and running powerful grassroots campaigns to challenge power and to shift the material conditions. Freedom Action Now is actually able to build political power that speaks directly to candidates, right? And speaks directly to this huge system of government that we have in our country that is historically and currently entrenched in white supremacy and patriarchy. And so we see Freedom Action Now as an opportunity to actually move and build power with our people in a different way than we could have at Freedom Inc. And so I'm just going to share with you all a little bit about who we are and what our vision is and what our mission is. And I'm so excited to be a part of this, to be showing up at this candidate forum with Freedom Inc., alongside Freedom Inc. But again, I am here representing Freedom Action Now. Okay, so I'm just going to share a little bit about our mission and vision. So Freedom Action Now is a Black and Southeast Asian, Wisconsin-based political organization creating change for most impacted communities through voter education, leadership development, community organizing, and policy advocacy. FAN, for short, supports candidates for Alder who will help Black and Southeast Asian communities by supporting the removal of funds from the police to community resources such as mental health services, community education, housing, and more. So that's what our stake in this is, right? We're here, like Freedom Inc., we believe that the electoral process is very important for our folks to engage in order to learn the system, yes, but also to make sure that we're able to build our own systems of power that can contend for power in the existing structures. So yeah, again, I'm super excited to be here, and I hope that all of you can go ahead And go find our pages, go find Freedom Action Now. I believe our information is like scrolling across the bottom of the page right now, but go ahead and find our Facebook, find our Instagram, find our Twitter, and follow along with us. We just recently released our endorsements for the 2021 spring Madison Alder race. So yeah, thank y'all for having me, and have a great forum.
Thank you, Manka, for explaining what Freedom Action Now is and joining us. We are going to go into the forum and we're going to have the candidates introduce themselves. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Please state your name, your correct pronouns, and why you are running for your current candidacy. And the first person going is Nikki.
Oh. Hello. Can everybody hear me? I'm having the worst computer issues.
I just wanted to say, yes, we can hear you, Nikki. I was muted. I think Nikki needs to rejoin and will be back with us when she can. So we'll go to Yanette to be introduced next.
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Are we good? Hello, my name is Janet Figueroa Cole. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am running by the motivation of the 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic. I started doing street outreach a few years ago, and I have seen firsthand the inefficiencies that exist in our current processes when we're trying to help people that are experiencing homelessness. I had a front seat row to the issues that impacts many people in our community. COVID-19, as we all know, has disproportionately impacted the health of people of color and has really magnified the inequalities and racist systems that marginalize our communities, especially our own communities here in Madison. These experiences have pushed me to want to do more, to continue to serve the city of Madison from a larger scope, and to really try to get a seat at the table where the decisions are made. I am from Puerto Rico. I've been on District 10 for over 25 years. And I have been in my community. I have been in the Don't Smart Neighborhood Association. I have served different roles in there, from president to the website developer and the treasurer. Currently, I sit at the NRT meetings for Ally Drive, and I am also the treasurer for the Friends of State Street Families nonprofit organization. I, along with a large number of Puerto Ricans here on the city of Madison, co-founded the Puerto Rico Relief Fund. When we collected over $90,000 in funds to serve the people of Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. So I am an advocate. I am a community person, and I feel this is the time for me to just take a step forward and continue to serve the people that have given me, the city that have given me so much over the years. So I'm looking forward to learn from this forum. I'm looking forward to collaborate with you and to learn more from your organizations, and to really count on you to carry me through the next 2 years in City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Yannette. The next person is from District 12. We'll have Tessa to introduce themselves.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Tessa Chavarria. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm running for Alder in District 12. I came to want to run for Alder for several reasons. I've been a longtime community organizer, mostly in the arts and music scene, opening up a community space on Milwaukee Street when I saw that there were no places that were not bars for people to play. And so the center was specifically for high schoolers to get to play music, to get to make art, to be able to be creative as we see those spaces disappearing, right? Those communal spaces where we can come together in community and connect with each other. So I decided to run for city council over the long year of 2020. We all know it was horrible. But it was horrible in very different ways for very different people, right? For people who safer at home is actually not safer. And for communities that don't have internet access, for the frontline workers that had to keep going. And I saw our city government not prioritize the health of at-risk communities, of people of color, of immigrants over and over again. And you see how much power is actually held at that city level. On top of that, being a participant watching the protests of the spring and summer and fall, and what people were calling for and accountability. And I didn't see that accountability happening by enough people on city council. And so I decided to run so that we can bring about that change, so that we don't go back to normal of racist patriarchal capitalism, that we actually challenge it and make Madison a city that's working for all of its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. We will have the next person, Brandy from District 14. So introduce yourself, your name. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
You want me to spell my name? I didn't hear what you said, but okay. I am Brandy Grayson. I'm running for alderperson, District 14. District 14 covers Leopold Way, Moreland Road, Rimrock, Badger Road, South Park Street, Arbor Hills, Todd Drive, McDivitt, West Beltline, like Southside Beltline, not West Beltline. It's more like a frontage Beltline. But it's Indian Springs. It's a huge kind of district. So anyway, I decided to run because I've been part of the Southside District for over 20 years. I've seen our community grow. I've seen our community change, and I've seen the effects and have the effects of aggressive gentrification that's happening in our area. It's happening across Madison, but specifically to this area, which is very diverse in cultures, language, backgrounds, class. You know, we have working class students. We have, excuse me, professional folks over here. And I just love our neighborhood and our community. It's just a melting pot of different people. So I decided to run for alderperson because our district has been lacking leadership for a long, long time. And in order for us to get bold as a city and to live up to our mission as a city, which is social mobility for all and equity for all, we must be willing to shake things up. We must be willing to have difficult conversations and challenge the status quo. We have a common council currently made up with a lot of lifers, people that's been on the common council for a lot of years and have become masters of a broken system. And if we're looking to create a system or a city that's works for everyone, we have to be able to bring in generations, our younger folks that's coming behind us, because it just requires innovation and creativity, and that often comes from our younger folks. So it is my plan to run. I am running, not my plan. I'm running. I'm going to win. So vote for me April 6th. But my plan is really to create a path for people that look like me, for young women, for young girls, for young men, and a path that says we don't just have to be outside the system asking the system to change. We can actually become part of the system and bring other folks with us and make space for change. And that's why I'm running. We need affordable housing, real affordable housing. We need real transportation. We need real resources. We have to get creative and sustain and increase our partnerships with community organizations so that we can have impactful programming to support healthy communities and youth programming. So that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy, for your answers. We are going to have JL Curry to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I just want to thank you for joining us tonight and for Freedom Inc. for hosting it. And I'm so honored to be part of a forum with such amazing local talent, and honored also to be running with the folks that are going to be answering questions tonight. So I'm JL Curry. I am running to become Alder of District 16. So District 16 is on the far east side. So it encompasses LVM, but East Buckeye neighborhoods, but as well as some neighborhoods that one would think would be in McFarland, Secret Places, Owl Creek, as well as some that are on the border of Madison and Monona. Our neighboring districts are 3 and 15. And so I am a lifelong Madisonian. I was born and raised here. I've lived my entire life on the east side. And currently my work in housing and our housing crisis as the housing director at YWCA Madison is just one of the, I'd say, many catalysts that made me decide to run for Alder. And it was being put in environments where I needed to be in front of committees or the council or the executive committee, for instance, and beg and plead a case about why nonprofits that step up to provide supportive housing need to have funding and assistance, especially from the city. And so I got used to navigating those very difficult and inaccessible pre-COVID spaces, and realized for myself, having a master's degree and let's just be real, mastering the art of code switching, just realized if this is my perspective, imagine the perspective of folks that I'm trying to amplify voices or bring into these spaces. And so I'm running not just to echo Manka and the introductions regarding Freedom Inc. and Freedom Action about building our own collective power, building our own political power. And so I really, really look forward to having a dialogue and conversation tonight. So thank you so much.
Thank you, JL. Nikki is back with us. So if you want to introduce yourself, hopefully it works out.
Ooh, hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Because everything is frozen for me. This is so embarrassing.
We can hear you, Nikki. Can you hear me? You can't hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you, so you can, yes.
Everything is just frozen on my end. Like I cannot see anything.
Well, maybe if you just go for it and introduce yourself, we'll be able to hear you.
Okay, let me know though. Yes, hello everybody, I'm sorry. My name is Nikki Conklin. I'm running for Alder of District 9, which is on the far west side of Madison. And it's a pretty big district, if you don't know already. It's part of Middleton. It has parts of Verona and obviously Madison. So yeah, I'm really running because District 9 needs a new, young, active voice to represent the community and bring power to all the folks. As a community activist, mother, first-generation college graduate, and deeply rooted neighborhood leader, I have experienced firsthand the issues that need tackling in this district. As a Black mother, living, working, and raising her children in one of the most segregated districts in the most segregated states, I have lived experiences that nobody else has, and I have the skills needed for change. I've lived in Wexford Ridge for the last 10 years. Like I said, putting myself through school. Ever since I moved over here, I've been deeply connected with the Lucia Community Education Center. And I've had many, many opportunities. And one of those opportunities was the Neighborhood Organizing Institute. And that's really what, just perfected or improved my leadership skills and really led me to be here in front of you guys today. The community has invested and empowered me, and now I want to invest and empower in my community. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alders, for introducing yourself. Ananda's gonna be asking the first question.
Hey, all right. As we said, please do use that bit.ly link if you want to submit your questions. We're getting some submissions, and that's really exciting to see them. So we will go through with our first question that we have in advance. We're going to be talking about police-free schools. If y'all don't know, that was one of Freedom Inc.'s biggest wins recently. We got cops out of schools, and so this subject is near and dear to our hearts. So for a little background information, we looked into it, and we know that when police interact in MMSD schools, quote, Black students are 65% of arrests, 82% of citations, and 49% of other resolutions, though they only make up about 17.3% of high school students in MMSD. And furthermore, we know that in 2015, Black girls were 100% of the middle school girls arrested by the Madison Police Department officers at MMSD schools, according to the Middle School Referrals to Law Enforcement and Arrests of Students analysis of 2015. So our first question is, as Alder, how will you end this cycle of harm and violence from police in schools? And the order in which we'll have our candidates answer the questions will be by district number from lowest to highest. So we'll start with candidate Nikki Conklin. We'll bring you back onto the screen. Oh, while we wait for her to rejoin, because, in the virtual tech world, it's crazy. Connectivity is crazy. So we'll go right to Yannette to answer this first question.
So yes, I mean that was quite a long battle to get policing out of schools, and it had years that took years to actually happen, and I'm extremely ecstatic that we were successful and thankful that all that work that your organization put into accomplishing that those changes. As a city council, I think it's my understanding we don't have all that control over what happens on the school. That's more for the superintendent area. But again, something that I keep on saying, just because we don't have access or control to things in the city council doesn't mean that our voices are silent. I think that anything that we are not able to really have a control over by legislation, we have the responsibility to be advocates for, to continue to keep that on the front burner of the issues and to ensure that our kids are safe. So definitely the statistics, they are, they tell the story. We cannot continue to put our kids to this pipeline of from school to jail. We need to provide more services for our youth, and that is where the city council actually can have some input. We need to make sure that we allocate money and finances to services to make sure that the kids have the proper after-school programming available to them, and that after-school programming is not just available, but the barriers that are imposed for them to access it are dismantled. So, as a city council, as a elder, one of my goals is to make sure that services basic services are provided to our communities. So, and that includes the youth. That's one of my most important topics to address. Here on the west side of Madison, District 10, we have a lot of we have a lot of youth that are getting in trouble, but because we are not giving them the tools for them to succeed, we're not giving them the spaces for them to thrive. So I really want to focus on a budget, on the city budget that focuses on people and people's needs. That's really one of my main goals. I want to focus on health and a health that manages the basic needs of our residents, and that includes kids. Thank you.
Hi, yes. So I remember sitting in a school board meeting, I think 2, maybe 3 years ago, listening to Freedom Action Youth Squad talk about their stories of being in the high schools and why the police should be removed. And I admire Freedom Inc.'s long-term plan, right? There was, I think people think this summer was it, right? But you guys know that's not true. There was years of work and hard work, and I'm so happy that the police are out of the schools. I think too, what we can do on city council to ensure that is make sure that money goes to the schools for resources of counselors, looking at the racial makeup of staff and teachers. We need to fix that, right? To solve the problem, great, we have the cops out, but there is institutional racism in our education system that we have to tackle from all sides. And whatever way the city can interact with the school board and interact with schools. In District 12, we have East High. So you're looking at what kind of emergency response calls can happen if there is an incident at the high school that doesn't involve bringing the police, right? Mental health professionals, parents, and transitioning away. I also am looking at the ways that local organizations are putting down transformative justice and restorative justice practices between students and in that schools, and how we enhance those pathways towards actually transformational healing inside communities instead of using the brutality of the police specifically towards children. So that is what I would like to see, right? How we can impact on city council the overall cultural shift and funding of our education system to make sure that it is addressing the root causes of racism from an early age up through the high school. Thank you.
Hey, Brandy, your turn to answer the question.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't say anything. It was just like frozen. Okay. Hey. Okay. So the question is about cops. Well, of course, I stand with the work of Freedom Inc. and other organizers across our state, across our country, to get cops out of schools. We know the data. I don't think it's necessary for me to repeat the data, but I mean, we know that having police in schools dehumanize our children. It criminalizes our children. It commodifies our children. Our children are taught from a very young age that when they step out the lines of social order, that force is necessary, which creates this prison to pipeline dichotomy or relationship we see that occurs in our schools. And it's just inhumane. I don't know what else to say. And my work as an alderperson will be centering those who are most vulnerable, right? And it doesn't, whether we're talking about police in schools or we're talking about the need for first responders or increased transportation in certain areas or affordable permanent housing, I will be advocating for the least of us and those who are most vulnerable and impacted by city decisions. And I'll be advocating and pressuring our county to do the same and make changes, because we often leave them out of the work that we need to do to ensure that cops do not return to our schools. And I do want to acknowledge the city alder folks who made the decision to cancel or terminate the contract with Madison Police Department, because that took some guts too. And there's so much work we need to do. We need to allocate funds to community organizations that's on the front line, and increase their capacity to scale up and scale out to support our youth, right? We need impactful youth programming, like someone mentioned, restorative justice, but not restorative justice done by the ones who are doing the oppressing is incongruent, right? And we often do that. We fund programs, fund organizations that are causing harm to said population, and we just need to stop it. So I'll be advocating for the city to be more intentional in supporting programming that works for Black children specifically, because we often fund everyone but Black organizations, or we fund organizations for every populations other than Black people. And we have to deal with the trauma as it relates to being Black in America, and specifically in our own community, what that stress looks like. How is that compounded in the homes, right? Working 2 or 3 jobs, no parents around, or parents are incarcerated, or parents are suffering for their own mental wellness challenges, right? And where's the resources? Where's the support? We really have to start digging up the root and just be intentional about it. So that's what I'll be advocating for. And whenever it comes up and however it comes up in our world and our community, I'll be right there standing for the people. So thank you.
Hey, everyone. So I really appreciate this question. I actively have a middle schooler and high school and MMSD schools on the East Side, Senate, and East. And I'm also a La Follette grad. So this issue is very near and dear to me. And I just want to give a shout out to all of the organizing efforts that not only Freedom Inc. did, but the Freedom Youth Squad. I sat in a couple meetings pre-COVID, and they went long. But to hear the voices of youth and to be empowered in that space to speak about their experience and transition that into, it will be transformational to get these police officers out of school, because they don't prevent crime, they respond to it. And a lot of the crime that happens in I won't even say crime, we're talking about children. And so I definitely look forward, kind of leaning in on what Jeanette said earlier. There is a fine line between city council and the school board. So I look forward to furthering relationships. I'm very close in age and association with both Savion Castro and Maya Pearson, who will be elected to the school board for this next term. So that is exciting. Having not only MMSD alum, but parents of current students, as well as, I will call ourselves young professionals. One thing that I want to gravitate to as well, having a high schooler and a middle schooler, our society has kind of transitioned in the way that we think about children, and we think about empowering their voices. And I want to move into a system where children, youth are part of the decision making. They may not have the power and authority to make the final, but they should be at the table about policies and decisions that impact them. And so I look forward to further engaging with the Freedom Youth Squad. I like to consider myself young. My kids will say otherwise. But I do look forward to expanding upon that and hinging on what Brandy also said. We need to start looking in the outside municipalities. We know that there's a lot of Black and brown students in the Verona School District and the Sun Prairie School District, and a few others, not as high in quantity. And so we need to get that collective power. And we have a very bold and powerful example of what the Freedom Inc. and Youth Squad has achieved. And I just hope to enhance those efforts.
Thank you everyone for answering that question. This is going to be our second question, and it's on housing justice. And we want to talk about housing insecurity in Madison and the issue of homelessness. Housing insecurity is one of the top barriers to sustain safety and repairing harms to victims and survivors of domestic violence. We believe that housing is a human right Even before this pandemic, on any given night, there are at least 650 people without homes, many of whom are sleeping on the streets in Madison. We also know that through working with survivors, housing security is one of the most crucial factors to provide the resources and security needed. And often with housing is also intertwined with policing of Black people's bodies. So the question is, how do you plan to address housing for all in your role as an alder? And the first person to go will be Jo.
All right. Full disclaimer, y'all gonna have to give me a whole forum or more than 2 minutes because I could talk days. This is my day-to-day full-time work as a housing director at YWCA, where I've been for almost 6 years coming this summer, working on the front lines of our housing crisis. So I've done work all the way from direct service of working with families as a shelter case manager, to providing supervision, to social work and social service professionals providing case management and coordination within our homeless services consortium, as well as now directing a 10 program department with over a annual budget over $3 million, as well as 12 full-time staff. And so I also want to give a shout out to Brandy and Urban Triage because they have entered that space. And focusing, for me, awareness is the biggest thing. I've lived here, again, my whole life, and I'm still baffled at the amount of stereotypes that surround homelessness, the NIMBYism that we see within neighborhoods when we know we have a shortage of affordable housing, when we decide to develop it and everybody's on board until it's in their backyard. So I'm sorry, I get far into acronyms. NIMBYism stands for not in my backyard. And so for the past almost 6 years, again, I've been on the front lines of amplifying the voices of folks experiencing homelessness, as well as providing that space and perspective in hostile environments, not friendly and not welcoming or not inclusive or even open-minded. There's a lot of things we could talk about. Tenant having right to legal counsel when they're facing evictions. We can talk about zoning and ordinance codes. We can talk about a lot of things, but we need to bring the humanity back in it. We get so caught up in funding and who's going to do what and who's operating what. And so I look forward to providing this perspective of someone who's been working in the field to bring to the council, because currently I don't think anyone has that much acute awareness or lived experience of doing the work to expand our knowledge and information and how we interact with the public, because this is a community building and we can't just have certain agencies or people on the bullhorn year after year. We all need to come together because the lack of affordable housing and housing crisis affects us all.
All right. Hey, it's on me. Okay. So how do you plan to address housing for all in your role as alderperson? As you guys know, my role in Madison has always been centered around the needs of those most vulnerable. And because we live in a community where Black people or people known as Black are disproportionately impacted by poverty, affordable housing, mass incarceration, education gap, health gap, infant mortality gap, we are number one in every social determinant. So I find myself often advocating for Black people in those areas and within those systems. So as an alderperson, I will bring with me my social capital, the relationships that I've built with organizations across years, across institutions, across systems. I will work with folks to create innovative and creative approaches to our housing crisis. It is necessary for us to create housing that is truly affordable and permanent. We have gotten into this habit in Madison in investing in big developers because we need to, under the skies or the understanding that we need to create capital. So big developers come in, they create what we call Section 42 or other, affordable housing developments, and they're not affordable. We have 2-bedroom house apartments in Madison going up under affordable housing. Folks are getting tax incentives and kickbacks. And the rent is like $1,200 to $1,300, and our minimum wage is still $7.25. something's not right with that. And as a result, we are finding more folks are struggling to find housing. And even when folks are placed in these affordable housing units, they're easily evicted because there's so many rules, right? Rules like, I don't know, if you can't burn incense, right? You can't burn sage or anything that represents smoke because it might get confused with marijuana or cannabis. And the reason I know these things because I've advocated, worked in housing with people, worked with TRC and other agencies to get people housing. And it's often people are often based on evicted or displaced from their housing, not because of something they necessarily did that caused harm to the property or someone else, but really because a landlord didn't like them, or they had an argument, or they didn't like their tone of voice, what we call, loaded language, what have you. So my job would bring that experience to the council and say, as we're considering contracts in affordable housing, we have to take in consideration the experience of those being placed in these units. We also need, home buyer programs with low barriers. We often invest in home buyer programs that no one qualifies for, no one meaning the people that they're set up to serve and to provide assistance and support. We need to focus on building generational wealth within Black communities. And it starts with home ownership and co-op models and other creative and innovative approaches to housing. And another option may be banking the land, but we need to do more research and create other alternatives. And my time is up. So thank you.
All right. Yes, yeah, especially on that last point that Brandy was just talking about, investing in home ownership programs and getting generational wealth back into communities. I think highlighted in what everyone's talking about is this affordable housing apartments that aren't truly affordable for actually minimum wage working jobs. That are also so tentative, right? It's not something you can pass on to your kids. It's not something you even know you're going to be in 2 years. And you get a better job and then you lose your housing. But then your extra income just goes to the higher rent. So I think that's about solving, and I know there are a lot of organizations and people who are looking at creative solutions in Madison. It's about shifting budget priorities. It's about shifting money into prioritizing ending our homelessness problem, ending our affordability problem. For me, it's a combination of those affordable apartment buildings, right, where there's mixed income, where there are apartments that are $300 a month so that someone on a minimum wage can afford to live there. And not segregating affordable housing away from non-affordable housing. In District 12, we're going to see a ton of development coming. And some of it's going to have affordable units, and some of it, the developers don't even want to put affordable units. And I'm sitting there in the meeting and I go, why would you ever build a building that doesn't have affordable housing? What's the point of unaffordable housing? It's just replacing our neighborhoods. It's replacing our districts, and it's gentrifying our city. And we've seen it approaching down the East Wash corridor, and it's hitting 12 and it's going to hit 16. So how do we stop that with investment? Do public land trusts. On top of that, renters' rights, right? Everyone who's facing eviction should have legal representation, so that the tenants have equal rights and chance to represent their cases. I would like to bring back tenant unions. We had them here in the 70s. We just need to give more power and voice to renters in this city to ensure that they have a fighting chance against landlords. And on the city level, we need to invest in communities that have been underinvested in generational wealth in those communities, and in building affordable housing in areas that are not impacted by environmental issues, right? They want to build the affordable housing, but they want to build it under the jets, by the airports, on toxic spills, and that's unacceptable. We need to make sure that we clean up our areas and have affordable housing that's sustainable and healthy for all Madison residents. Thank you.
Yannette, You haven't unmuted yourself. So we lost all that beautiful stuff you just said. So unmute yourself.
Oh my God, this story of my life. Okay, well, let me start over again. So I couldn't agree more with everything that has already been said, but I also think that it is super important that we focus, that we really prioritize the people that are housed right now. So we want to make sure that we halt all evictions, that we extend the moratorium, that the people that are already in the verge of housing securities and being on the street, that they have the resources and the services that they need to stay housed. We cannot afford as a city to continue to add more demand to a system that is already so fragile and is in such a big crisis. The next thing that I think is super important is the need of coordination of efforts. We saw this through the pandemic. We saw how the nonprofit organizations and government agencies were forced to work together to be able to serve these communities, and we cannot just go back to the way they used to be. The process, we need to take those relationships and those connections that were made, and we need to further them more and make them stable and make them work for the people that we're trying to serve. So we definitely have to stick to better collaborations among the city. The one thing as a process mapping and data analyst, crazy person, we had to do a better job about data collection. I mean, it's really, I've been sitting in some meetings from the city and some other groups that when we look at data collection, everybody just like, they just look at each other with this terror in their face, because we need a better way to collect the data that comes into our systems, and we need a better way to report that data. Numbers are important. Numbers tell stories, which brings me back to what Jael said earlier. That we need to be able to tell stories and make those stories so people can see the humanity on the people that are around us. And that is really lacking on the city. I mean, people are too involved on themselves sometimes. We are all busy. We work a lot. Some people work multiple jobs, and we really are not paying attention of what is happening around us, and people don't understand here what it means to be homeless in Madison, and the stereotypes that comes attached to that. People don't see that often we have entire families homeless, and we're talking about babies and school kids. People don't understand that many kids go to school hungry, that they depend from school lunches from Monday through Friday, and Saturday and Sunday they are whatever comes by. So we need to really educate people. So for that, we need better data. We really need to be able to tell stories that brings the humanity of people to the front forth. I mean, again, working at the Beacon, working with Friends of State Street families, these are things that are extremely close to my heart. And I definitely want to bring that experience to the table, but I also want that experience. I want those experiences to actually be shared in a way that we can say from the people on the council that have never experienced this, say, hey, let's go and do outreach tonight. Just let me take you inside of this world so you can see what it's like. I think that is something that is lacking today at the table. And I really hope that people at the council that haven't experienced, doesn't have the experiences that we had shared here, are open to really experience those things at first hand, because we only make them better legislators if they can see and feel what it's like to be suffering from being on the streets or suffering from housing insecurities. Thank you.
Thank you all so much, candidates, for answering those questions. Now, with our next question, we'll be moving into immigration justice. And so, as a brief background for y'all in context of the question. So, due to U.S. militarism and imperialist aggression, people from around the world are forced to flee their homes in a refugee crisis caused by the U.S. U.S. militarism and aggression all over the world, and more specifically for our people in Asia and Africa, directly fuel group conflict and violence. At the same time, the US plans to deport Black and Southeast Asian people back to the countries that US has interfered in. This is visible in our BIPOC populations in Madison. Many of the Southeast Asian families in Madison that we know have someone who has been forcibly removed by final deportation orders. Many Somali and Bantu people have long been dealing with deportation in this country, and the newest waves of Congolese refugees are at the forefront of deportation efforts. Black refugee and migrant communities are growing in numbers, and in Madison, simultaneously with little to no services for them. In addition to deportation, there are significant lacks of resources to support Black and Southeast Asian refugees. So with this next question, how will you provide support and resources to the increasing refugee and immigrant population in Madison? And we'll start with you again, Yanette, and work our way from there.
Yes. So District 10 has changed a lot. District 10 has a large number of immigrant and Latinx population at this moment. So it is something that impacts not only district, my district, but the entire city, as you just mentioned. Immigration is a crisis around it's a national crisis that we are living right now. I mean, just today, look at the pictures of so many immigrants at the border, so many kids, again, just stuck together, just like they were the past few years. It's just like there's no plan to help these people be safe. So here in Madison, I mean, we have made of immigration, we have made immigration a crime, and we need to start decriminalizing that. It is not the way to tackle the problem. So one of the things that a couple of things that I feel strong about is we have to make sure that the Madison Police Department do not facilitate any interaction with ICE, that they don't put immigrant information in their data systems, that they really work to protect the residents of this city. These immigrants are residents of the city of Madison, and they should be treated as residents, as community members. We need to make sure that we fight for them to get them their driver licenses. That we know that is a right that has been taken from them, to allow them to have the driver license so they can go and do their work, so they don't get criminalized from driving without a license. And we need to make sure that whatever things are out there that is accessible for them, it is not just accessible, but it's in a way that they understand it, that is translated in their languages, that people know that the services are there for them to receive. There's no point of having services if people don't know how to access them. And we have, Voces de la Frontera has become a voice in Madison. We used to hear about Voces de la Frontera all the way over there from Milwaukee, but they have a grassroots movement here. So we need to work with agencies like Voces de la Frontera, Centro Hispano, Dane County Immigration Affairs Offices, the United Way, the Multicultural Center. We have a bunch of agencies that are experienced and have the expertise to deal with these issues. So we need to make sure that they're funded, that they are communicated, that we are collaborating as a city with them to ensure that immigrants are safe, protected, and receiving the services that they need. Again, a healthy community is a safe community, and immigrants are part of our community, and they deserve to be taken care of as well as everybody else. Thank you.
Hi. Yes. Yeah. I agree with everything Yanette just shared, and to add on that, I think that people have very different ideas of who immigrants are, right? But immigrants are everyone, and they come from all over the world. And like it was stated in the initial question, it's U.S. forced policy that causes a lot of that. I know I used to have a piece of art on my wall that showed a big scoop then the U.S. lighting the country on fire and then scooping the people back into it. And we need to take responsibility for the fact that the U.S. causes this harm around the world. And how do we as a community, as Madison, make sure that our city is a safe and good place for people to immigrate to, right? Because we should have no rights to keep them out. So, no working with ICE, right? Obviously, as Yannette started talking about, our local law enforcement should have no communication with ICE. We should not document immigration status. The city council should push to be a sanctuary city. But beyond that, we saw in the COVID pandemic, right? Like, as people were getting aid from the federal government, so many people were left out. Undocumented people weren't allowed to get the checks. Homeless people also. But the communities and the people who needed that money the most, who needed those resources the most, were the ones that were left out the most frequently. So how do we as a city council work to address, to make sure that our funds are going into refugee communities, immigrant communities, and helping to support them to get driver's license, to be housed, to have legal representation, to have all of the rights of being a resident of Madison, and to treat them equally at the local level as we do any resident of Madison. So I think key in that is listening to those populations. What are their needs? What are the things that are the biggest barriers to them? Is it translating things into all the languages that are spoken in Madison? Is it making sure that school programs are multilingual? Is it jobs? Right? Like, what are those communities in need of? Because they already know. They know what the resources they need are, and the city needs to listen. To prioritize serving those communities and acknowledging their importance into us thriving as a whole city. Thank you.
Brandy, you're muted.
Okay, sorry, thank you. All right, getting back to it. All right, to try not to repeat what folks have already stated, there's a lot of things that we can do to support our immigrant populations. And one is establishing some kind of immigrant affairs on a local city level. We have like the county level, but I'm not even going to get into that, waste my 3 minutes on that. I just feel like we're more impactful if we can move from the city level, which can directly support organizations that are already standing for immigrants and refugees' rights and safety. I also think that we could do more in terms of reasserting our commitment to public safety for our immigrant population, because when we have ISIS show up in our communities in partnership with our sheriff department or Madison police, we say that we're a sanctuary community or sanctuary city, but what does that really mean, right? It should mean that police officers should be prohibited from arresting folks solely on their status, but we also know that there's not enough work done on the city level, Madison Common Council and through our mayor's office to make sure that that's not happening, right? We say it, but oftentimes we declare things and we don't walk the walk. We talk the talk, but we don't walk the walk. So my work as an alderperson would be to ensure that we are walking a walk in whatever capacity that may look like. Also, we need to make sure that the organizations and the legal clinics that we have in our area to serve our immigrant population are fully funded, right? That they have the resources that they need to serve and protect and be there for our folks, especially when we know how expensive it is for folks to cover their application fees and to fight the government really for their own, to become legal or, their status or what have you. Maybe some people don't. That's not even up for us to decide. But also we can, I think, someone mentioned that we can provide some kind of ID or something, right? Like a municipal ID card so people can still access the resources and benefit that our cities offer. I think that's super important. And I also think that our city government can do all kind of things. Like there's all kind of coalitions happening across our country, with different cities working together to figure out how to support our folks and protect them. I don't know, there's just so much that we could do. And I think, as always, we have to center those who are most vulnerable in our conversation. And we have actions with our words, because we often, as a city, and in politics, we talk a lot about what we should do and could do about equity. But when it comes to actually getting it done, we often backpedal, or we often complain about why we can't do something versus getting creative and figuring out how to get it done. So I will be the one on Common Council, along with my other partners and other folks on the front line, that believe in all lives, Black lives, immigrants' lives, right? And not all lives like your Trump folks say, but we believe I believe in the humanity of all people. So I will be advocating for all people, specifically those who are most vulnerable. So thank you.
All right, I'm unmuted. Cool. So much has been said that I could echo from Jeanette, Brandy, and Tessa. This may be an unpopular approach, but I always like to put humanity back in the issues that we're talking about. Politics a lot of times seems to be driven by the ego and folks wanting to be recognized for work, alliances, coalitions they've builded. But a lot of times we lose sight of those who are living the statistics and data that we speak about in council meetings, in county board meetings, all of these spaces. And so working downtown on the Capitol Square, we provide affordable housing for women and families who are going through all types of traumas, reliving traumas, trying to escape, heal, and stabilize. And so I like to put a face on this. And so it's interesting, Tessa, I was snapping as you were speaking, because it's interesting that the US has created many of these dynamics that they are now saying, oh, we can't allow these folks in. And again, there's so many stereotypes. So again, being born and raised here, and on the East Side, as I got older and grew through school, specifically getting to middle school and high school, became aware of a rising Latinx population, a Hmong population. And so that's just increased in the 20 years I've been out of high school. I don't think it's been that long, almost. And so working downtown, like, the face of these folks that we're talking about, they bus our tables, they clean our buildings, they build the homes and units that we're talking about of affordable living. But because of their undocumented status, live in fear. I know folks talked about it or hinged on it, but this last ICE raid, we've been devastated. Our city has been devastated. And so I do applaud the efforts of the city council of going to the city level of saying, we have not been involved or in communications with ICE. That is not our position. Continuing to push towards Madison being a sanctuary city. Because again, like, let's look at the history. Let's look at the history of a lot of things that we equate events, tragedies, but we don't bring the humanity of the everyday folks who during these raids couldn't even leave their homes. Organizations like Voices that, I'm sorry, my Spanish pronunciations is terrible, so I just will Voices de la Frontera, delivered food, groceries to folks who were in fear of leaving their homes, of peering out the window. These are the perspectives that we need to amplify, as well as folks who have been hitting the ground running based on their own lived experience, possibly being still undocumented immigrants themselves, DACA students. Let's put the face back on it, but also there's a plethora of issues. So one thing that I see within the housing system is, especially with Latinx and the Southeast Asian population, we don't see a lot of folks coming to our shelter. And when I look around, it's because the folks who are part of these systems are not represented, are not representative of the populations that they serve. And so a lot of folks still, again, when I talked about ego trips and why do people get into leadership? If it's not truly to serve, it's time to back away, because there are folks who are ready and willing to serve and will use their power to leverage for the good of the community and not for that of themselves. And so Governor Evers' budget, we know that it's a Republican dominated Senate, but in his proposals, licenses for all. Imagine getting stopped, being undocumented, receiving a citation, a ticket, losing your vehicle. Like, again, let's bring the humanity back to it. I'm a storyteller. It may not be everybody's ministry or way that they receive information, but I find that so much we demystify a lot of the stories and stereotypes and fear mongering and gaslighting that is very prevalent in our own community, but nationwide. So I think it's about my time.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the community questions that were given. The first question is $1,500 from the government is not enough to get through this pandemic. If elected, will you support an economic stimulus package for the city to those most impacted in Madison? And the order it will be JL, Brandy, Tessa, and then Yannette.
Y'all caught me mid-fan and I'm burning up. So if my face gets warm, it's just because I'm warm. So bear with me. We cannot rely on politics to liberate our communities, especially BIPOC communities. And so having that reality, but also building coalition and power to amplify our voices and build Black political power, build Southeast Asian power, build upon what's already being built in our community. So with our new administration, I'm not even going to mention the past, we know that there has been a Build Back Better plan and trillions of dollars that have come into our nation. And so Wisconsin is one of the recipients of that. And I'm learning as a very audacious and I believe bold leader that wants to bring common sense back to decision making. There are lots of things that I think I will not have certain power or control of if I am elected as alder or on the council. But working in tangent with the county, with the city, with nonprofits that are supporting our most vulnerable and impoverished communities and individuals. Again, providing that leverage. And I'm learning about all of the resources that cities and municipalities have of converting taxes into dollars that will support businesses and people, of levying things. And so I'm not quite there because, again, as a common sense person, like, make it make sense. And so I'm in the process of what can I do with my power and how can I leverage that? But absolutely, it's not enough. Neither is the proposal for us to become a community that provides a basic income. I am a proponent of pushing our folks out of relying on systems that were never meant or designed for us. And what does that look like? And I think, again, that comes directly from the voices who are living the experiences. And so I hope to expand that throughout the city, throughout my district, and continue that in my everyday work as well as personal activism.
All right, thank you for the question. So honestly, I've never even thought about it. I never even thought about the city allocating funds to its residents as a result of COVID. So I appreciate the question, and it actually gets me to thinking, like, is that possible? What would that look like? Where would the money come from? Could we allocate for certain departments for funds to be reallocated for certain areas to residents of Madison? And what does that look like? And I would say yes. And does it come from the city or does it come from the county? Because you know how the city, or is it a partnership, or what, is that something we advocate from a state level? Because we have millions and millions of dollars coming to the city from state and federal COVID relief funds, right? And the city, it's funny because it could say, they get funds. Last time they got some money and they said, we're going to give $750,000 to small businesses who've been impacted, or businesses that's been impacted by COVID through grants. And there were some barriers there. So a lot of people known as Black who were entrepreneurs and business owners wasn't able to access that money. And if they did fill out the application, it didn't get processed, but the city was able to remove $250,000 of that money and handpick a nonprofit for a future building, right? So I think if we could do that, we can figure out how to use COVID relief effort funds from the state and federal level to support a stimulus package for our city. But it has to also expand beyond our city limits, because if you know anything about Madison, you can be on one side of a street and be the city, and the other side would be the town of Madison or Fitchburg, right? And the populations haven't changed. So that's something that we have to get in consideration too, because what does equity really look like in our cities as it relates to how our districts work and how these lines and borders, these imaginary borders are drawn. So I absolutely would be for that, and the creative approach and working with grassroots organizations and community members to articulate it. Like, what do we need and how can we get it? And how can we make sure that it's just not city, but county and everyone in our community, right? And what would be the limits, because then we have to get in that conversation. Who would disperse it? Who would be responsible? Because as JL mentioned, the organization that I lead, Urban Triage, we just got into homeless outreach and homeless work, right? We've always done eviction prevention funds, but not on the city level, right? It's more so of we just help families and advocate for families as they came through our programming. And now we receive city funding under the Homeless Consortium. And there's just so much work we need to do in terms of making things accessible and working with the city folks and administrators and our mayor and our county folks to be in cooperation and collaboration, because a lot of the conversations we don't get access to. So like, it's almost like the county and the city don't even work together, right? Like the city says, okay, let's do this thing. The county is like, nope, we're not going that way, which impacts all of us, and we really need to get into how to organize and mobilize on a county level as well. How do we show up for county meetings to advocate for a stimulus package, right? Because the county really does play a huge role, and they really too often get a pass. So I'm all about working for the people and figuring out what's the best approach in partnership with folks who are on the front line, and my other co-conspirators that's already on Madison Common Council, and a few folks who are part of our county exec board. How do we get what our people need? And that's going to take some consideration and working with folks who actually advocate and work for people that we want to assist and support. So yeah, I'm definitely for it. And the question is, how do we do it in an equitable, just way? And that's going to take us some conversation and being in communication. So thank you for the question.
Yes, yeah. So simply, yes, I'm in favor of that. Complicatedly, as Brandy and Yael have both stated, what do we have control over, and how can we change that budget? I know that we have a lot of money coming from the federal government and from the state, and they like to tie it up with a billion restrictions to prevent us from doing things like this, right? The intent is to have that money go to developers, to businesses, with the idea that stimulates our economy, right? The classic trickle down effect, right? We will save the too big to fail, and let all of the other people starve on the street. And so when we see a changeover in city council, when we see enough voices on there to challenge that status quo, that's looking at the budget, and that's figuring out how do we do economic stimulus for the most impacted in Madison. And like we were talking about in the last question, there are many residents of Madison that didn't even get any of the checks, right? Much less this last check. And so how do we ensure that when we look at distributing those funds, it's going to refugees, it's going to immigrants, it's going to undocumented people, it's going to homeless people, as well as the people who are in their apartments facing eviction or on unemployment? And how do we extend unemployment benefits and freeze evictions and combine all of that with also giving people the money to pay their bills, to put food on the table, to keep a roof over their heads? So I'm in favor of all of those things. And I think that if we institute participatory budgeting on the city level, we'll be able to see how we can not just change our budget in times of crisis to work for the people, but how we can do that all the time so that we work towards eliminating some of these problems. We address these root causes and prevent the need to continually do crisis management, right? That we get actual affordable housing and living wage jobs and all of those things all the time for people, so that we aren't faced with eviction crises and loss of income the minute a larger crisis like a global pandemic hits us. So I think it's addressing all of those things. The city's already working on its budget for next year, but it's not going to go to public comment until September, October, when it's like last minute, hey, look, this is our budget. But they're talking with the Chamber of Commerce, they're talking with big developers, they're talking with big business, and they're making a budget that works for them. And so when the new set of council gets in, they need to make sure that we're establishing a budget that works for the people and that works to give money back to the communities that have suffered so greatly over this last year, and ensure that they don't get evicted, to ensure that they can pay their bills until they can work again, and that access is to every resident of Madison. I can't agree more that we need to connect with the county board and work on the county level. I wish we could work on the state level in a more proactive way, a more productive way, but the gerrymandering of our state makes it really hard for us to have impact on the state level. But the county level, we should definitely be working in coordination with and promoting the same plan forward. Thank you.
Yes, that is a great question, and everything that you guys said, I'm in agreement with. I mean, especially in the part of how can we manage that. I mean, we are going to have a very tight budget coming up this round, so it's going to be extremely difficult to manage. But I am determined to make sure that we have a budget that reflects the needs of the people. So we will have to prioritize what those needs are, because we're not going to be able to take care of all the needs that we currently have, especially after a pandemic. So there's things, like the mental health crisis, the mental health unit to take care of, to be able to assist mental health calls and keep our people safe. I want to prioritize things like that. I want to make sure that we do make it a impactful and meaningful effort to do collaborate with the county, because I think the money does comes from the county. They have more resources than we do. And what Brandy was saying earlier, often we are, the city's moving in one direction while the county's moving against in the opposite direction. So with this pandemic, again, we saw how, again, not perfect. I'm not saying that it has been perfect, but we have seen how the pandemic has forced the city staff, non-profit organizations, the county to work together. They have been forced to do that. So we just need to continue to collaborate and to continue to make those relationships stronger. When it comes to the state, I mean, yes, perhaps we cannot collaborate at the same level as we can with the county, but that doesn't mean that we are not responsible and to advocate. We need to advocate, and we need to align with people that can help us at those levels. So collaboration in when it comes to the budget is going to be super important, because we may not be able to we may have a project in mind for the city that we can actually say, here's the entire project, the city will pay for this, the county will pay for that, but we have to really come together to make these projects as a unit. So I don't know what the limits are. I don't know where the money will come from. But at the end of the day, what I truly believe is important is that we have a budget that takes care of the people's basic needs in whatever shape and form that might be. So collaborating will be a key element in that process. Thank you.
Thank y'all all so much for your answers to that question. So we're still looking to get questions from the community. And the next question that was submitted, I did some background research on it to share with y'all. But we already know this research. We know that there is currently a crisis of violence against trans women of color. 4 out of 5 murders of trans women are trans women of color, and Black trans women in particular are the most targeted group. The murder of transgender people in the first 7 months of 2020 alone completely surpassed that of the trans lives taken in the entirety of the year prior. So this question asks, there is a lot being done to harm queer and trans folks right now, making us the scapegoat for everything wrong in society or just killing us, especially trans youth. How will you change it? What are your actionable plans on how to end violence against and provide resources for trans, queer, and intersex folks? So we'll do the opposite order again by starting with Yannette this time around.
Well, that is a tough question to hear, and I mean the reality is extremely painful to face, and it's 2021. I just don't understand what it takes people so long to get the information that they need in order to understand things that they are not familiar with. So again, education, super important. Just education, so people can really understand these people that are different than us. Empathy, like Shael is going to say at the end there, put in a face, put in the stories of these people out there, so people can really feel the empathy and have the respect for human life that is somewhat lost in the process. When it comes to violence in general, we have to approach violence as a pandemic, just the same way that we approach a COVID-19. We have to approach violence in a way that we can interrupt it, that we can isolate it, and we can stop it from happening. We had the Madison and Dane County Health put together the violence prevention plan. May not be, I get it. There's people already throwing out there that it's not a perfect plan. And I get it, it's not a perfect plan. However, it's a good way to start. It's a good place that we can all as a community come together and participate and have our voices heard. As we need to just get going on it. We need to then pivot to wherever we need to pivot and make the changes that we need in our community to make our community safer. A safe community is a healthy community. It's a healthy community, is a safe community. Bottom line, if we are able to interrupt the cycle of violence, we are going to be safer. So education and really trying to look at these kind of violences from the pandemic lens, which will be treated, isolated, and put the resources in place to give people, to make sure that people have the basic needs met. Honestly, that question really, it is really hard to feel the pain and the fear that comes with it. And my heart goes out to anybody that is put in those kind of situations. And we just need to find a way to make sure that people see the humanity in the people that are not like them, and they are constantly being marginalized across the city. Yeah, that's. Thank you.
Yes, this is a great question. I really appreciate it, and I think that it's on our minds on a state level too, right? That the state legislature is looking to limit these rights and to retaliate against our most vulnerable communities, and it brings up intersectionality, right? That there's a combination of oppressions that are making trans women, Black trans women, Black trans men, other people of color that are trans, the most vulnerable, right? The most of the forefront. I think there's also a statistic out there that trans youth are more likely to be homeless. And how do we address that on a city level with laws and also on a cultural level for families, right? So that those youth are not homeless, right? That we have a society, as Janelle and Annette are going to say, of compassion and humanity, right? Growing up as a queer person in rural America, I constantly faced lots of harassment and violence for my identity, for my representation of gender. And I'm a light-skinned mixed person, right? I look white, and so I can only imagine that the intersectionality of those identities with being Black or Native American or Hmong in our current society make it 10 times worse. So when we address homophobia, when we address transphobia, when we address racism, when we address classism, we have to do them all together and understand that the people who are at the intersection of all of these identities are the most vulnerable. So how do we work as a city to fix that? Gender neutral bathrooms, education, laws protecting people in their renting, in their jobs against discrimination. I know we have some of this in place in the city of Madison, but how do we go above and beyond? How do we ensure that those people feel heard and welcome and safe in our city by giving them a seat at the table, by talking to them? And that's reaching out to all communities that have queer members and uplifting their voices, right? We talk about representation in our government and in our democracy, and that is reaching out to those communities, bringing them to the table, and making sure that we are establishing a city that is safe for them. And so I guess that's where I come for it, and the resources they'll provide, that's to the organizations that are doing that work already, right? To G-Safe, to the other organizations that are making space and educating our community and giving resources to the queer folks that are don't have housing or can't go back to their families or facing domestic abuse, and also to make sure that those hate crimes are tracked and understood and acknowledged as such, right, on a racial and a gender level. So I think that's where we come at the conversation, and that's my time. Sorry.
Hey, y'all. Yeah, I know I'm trying to eat while you other folks are talking. So thank you for the question. I think one of our priorities, just like a lot of marginalized groups, has to be housing, right? It has to be housing. It has to be a safe place. A lot of folks' needs, it's hard to meet folks' needs when they don't have housing. And we know that trans folks last year, 2020, I believe it was named one of the bloodiest years for trans folks, which is not okay, right? And how do we keep our trans folks, our most vulnerable populations, safe? And it really starts with housing. It starts with transitional housing. It starts with co-op models that provide resources for trans folks, because mind you, and I can't speak for and don't claim to speak for anyone, but I'm from my experience with folks who fall in this intersection, in these intersections of LGBTQIA, is it's the number one challenge is housing. The number two is safety. Number three is trauma, right? Like, so there's a lot of compounded trauma, a lot of stuff that occurs and happens to folks who fall in these intersections as a result of our society, as a result of their family institutions, as a result of bullying, right? And a lot of trans folks we find on the street that's homeless between, teenagers and young adults. And we really have to allocate and advocate for resources to be funded to organizations like Freedom Inc., who specializes in LGBTQIA populations and specifically Black folks, right? Because we are the most impacted and vulnerable, right? And that doesn't mean we leave everyone else out. It just means that when we serve those who fall in the intersection, the most vulnerable, we serve everyone. I would advocate for G-Safe also to be funded, and to get creative in terms of shelters and giving incentives to shelters and other housing folks to provide safe spaces for folks who are transgender, and really look at our own policies on a city level that protects and provide supports for folks who fall in these intersections, right? Like, do we have any workplace resolutions or city policies that govern how folks are treated Are we really looking at and collecting the appropriate data, right? Are we holding our police department accountable for the way that trans folks are dehumanized and the force used against them? Are we doing our part, right? Are we holding the media accountable in our own district, in our city, for how we represent trans folks and LGBTQIA issues? Do we just focus on white folks? You know what I mean? Folks who feel safe. When we talk about LGBTQIA issues, usually it's white men that we feel comfortable representing, because we know patriarchy still shows up. Like, how do we become advocates on a city level? I think that comes with partnerships and creative and strategic partnerships and innovative partnerships with folks who are doing the work. So thank you for the question.
Yes, thank you for the question. So I was trying to keep up. Everyone, Tessa, Brandy, so far said some things that I want to loop back to. So intersectionality is key. With, not trying to harp on it, but I think during the pandemic, the accessibility to news, being in front of your computer all day long, media, being interested in certain stories. It's interesting that Brandy mentioned the media, because my first thing is continuing, again, those stories, being a storyteller, to say their names. 2020 being a terrible year of loss for everyone, but the bloodiest year for those who identify as transgender and non-binary. And so saying their names, Tony McDade, a Black trans man that was killed, Nina Pop, Raya Milton, Lexi, we need to continue saying their names, because these are the narratives that are missing from mainstream media and also missing from our mainstream everyday conversations. It is unfortunate that folks, again, that look like myself, come from underrepresented populations, oppressed populations, and again, populations that are directly in situations based on governments or our nation. So safety is key. And I want to take it kind of back to housing, because again, that's my purview and my range. And I will be vulnerable enough to say that it starts with education. I personally still need to educate myself so that I am aligning myself as a co-conspirator and moving away from being an ally. And part of that means increasing my own knowledge so I can actually go into a space and speak with what I'm going to do, but also call for input and feedback and coalition with those, again, who are living the data and statistics that I may quote, but haven't had a personal experience. And so amplifying those voices. And I think one of the greatest things is realizing when we haven't fostered environments that will allow folks to heal, allow them to feel safe, allow them to be their full selves and their full identities. And so within housing, that's a huge loss. Tessa spoke about unaccompanied youth or transgender youth. That's a huge population where there's limited resources. And if there is a resource, especially in Madison and Dane County, it is run, unfortunately, by folks that aren't representative of those cultural identities and those life experiences that trans and non-binary folks of color experience. We tend, like Brandy said, to focus on the narrative of Caucasian white folks, the dominant society of what has put into place policies and things that harm and threaten Black lives, and all of those I'm trying to think of a word to say. I've been so immersed of being in spaces where this isn't the norm and we talk about it. And so to me, again, it's going back to education, because I need to express a humility as a leader going into any space, especially if that's not my experience and I haven't had direct contact. So again, looking forward to build upon those coalitions with Freedom Inc., Freedom Action, many, many, many others. But I see that I think I'm at time. So thank you.
Thank you for answering the question. This is our last question, and we kind of like contextualized it, and from my own experiences too, that we know that the Common Council meetings are very inaccessible, from everything like how long they are, and you're expected to wait before speaking, and how it forces people to have their cameras off. And it also is inaccessible because it prevents people from reading lips while people are speaking. This question really speaks to the frustration people have felt attempting to speak at these meetings. And so the question is, I waited for hours to speak at a city meeting before. After work, I waited only to be treated rudely and dismissed once I got to talk. How will you change that moving on? And
Yes, thank you. Very important question. So I know that recently there was discussions about how the council meetings are long. It's not sustainable. You wait for hours, your agenda may come up and you fall asleep. You may miss or not hear your name being called because you're in the bathroom or cooking dinner or multitasking like we all do. And so I'm really, really passionate about this because, again, I have served on other boards, and we want to be conscious and intentional about everybody's time and resources, but specifically for public input. The definition of a common council member is being a public servant. Your job is to serve the public. And so some of the narrative that I've heard so far, again, seems to make it in the guise of there's a lot of community input and attendance now that things have been virtually, but we shouldn't limit public comment. Those of you who have been involved in political forums, 2 minutes, 3 minutes is not a conversation. It doesn't allow you to expand upon thoughts, beliefs, values, and then match them with policy. And so as someone who has had to balance multiple responsibilities, go to meetings, attend them for hours, I think there's other resources that we could use. We could meet more frequently. We could reduce the number of council seats in committees so that council members can focus on 1 to 2 areas where they will either be of key expertise or key to their district and what that district is facing. And that also allows for more community input, and that allows for more citizens and folks who are, again, living the experiences we are making decisions about to be part of those entities and bring their perspectives and voices forward. So I'm totally in support of that. Oh, did I already go? Okay, I saw a 30-second at 7:39 at 7:43. So thank you.
Girl, I'm laughing hard as heck. I wasn't even paying attention to the Okay, and I can't even remember the question. Community question. Oh, city council waiting to talk. Well, y'all know I've been in the streets with y'all. I've been at those city council meetings, and sometimes we go all the way to the morning, or folks strategically move agenda items to get us to not be present, or to fall off or to twinkle off. Or the last city council meeting I attended very boldly, the mayor told people to talk less in the amount of time that was given because there were so many people. And I felt really offended. Like, you only get like 3 minutes. Why would I talk less? Because so anyway, so of course I stand with the people. If you come to advocate for something, I will be that alder person that will be like, nope, we're listening. I'm going to, I don't know the appropriate Robert Rules of Order stuff yet, but I will. We're going to reject it, or, whatever, put a motion in to continue, or, I will be that thorn, right? And y'all know that I'm transparent. I'm transparent with my flaws, the work that we do, when there's things that happen that might not be the outcome we're looking for, that will continue. My integrity is everything. My integrity will remain the same as your alderperson, as a city elected official. So when there's foul stuff happening, you're going to know about it. You're going to know about it. And I'm going to be working and still doing the work of advocacy and organizing with the people that's on the front line, because that is what the work of alder people and city people should be. How do we take care of, bring to the table in the conversations, the needs of our constituents, the people that are most vulnerable to the decisions that are being made by Common Council, right? So you rock with me, you rock, of course, I got you. Like, I know what it means to organize, mobilize around Common Council and to be limited, and for agenda items to change last minute, because they know you're mobilizing, for folks to create an alternate resolution because they know you're mobilizing, people removing the teeth out of policies, like the oversight review committee. Like, this is things that happen, and true alder people, folks that you can trust, or elected officials, should be the first ones to contact people who are in our community grassroots organizers to say, look, this is happening. And we do have a couple alder people that currently do that. So I will be rocking with them, and we'll be getting the work done from the inside out. So thank you.
Yes, yeah, definitely. It's especially to Brandy's last point there, the Civilian Oversight Board, right? When they took all the teeth out, we need to be holding accountable there. So, in terms of making space at the city council meetings, I like everyone else on this call so far agree that we should allow everyone to talk, right? And how do we make sure that that's accessible and easy, right? I have heard people talk about calls 15 minutes before you would be up for your agenda item, right? City staff that manage these meetings and say, okay, here's a text alert out to everyone who signed up to speak on item 13 of the agenda. We're finally at item 13 of the agenda. And that gives you some time to get back to the Zoom call, right? Like to the meeting, if you are just listening to it while doing other things around your house. So I think there's several things that the city could implement to make that easier, right? To reading written statements, to notifying people with warnings coming up to the agenda items, to not changing the agenda items right before the meeting to add confusion to public comment. And of course, allowing everyone who signs up to speak the ability to speak. And when we are past COVID and we're back to in-person meetings, still allowing people to make public comment remotely, right? So that they can do it from their homes. On the internet, if that is the way they prefer to do it, or they can do it in person. I think there are some advantages to being able to do the online comment in that you can be in your house. And so I address all of those things. And obviously, to the comment of being rude or dismissed, I value whether or not I agree with the opinion, the comments of every resident, and I think they need to be taken seriously, and council members need to take them seriously and hear the constituents, because they are the people that we're working for. That's the reason that we're there. So making sure we're centering people's voice and giving them the option in the best way possible for them to be able to comment and participate in city government. Thank you.
Great question. I strongly believe we definitely do not want to limit public's input on city council meetings. I am not running for a seat for me to make decisions on my own. I need those voices. I need the guidelines from those voices to guide me into the needs of the city. So definitely, I'm not coming alone into the city council. I'm bringing a tribe with me. I want those people to be engaged. I want them to call in. I want their voices heard. From an outsider, being one of those people that call the city council and they sit there and fall asleep and everything that we just discussed already, or got off from work or work extra hours just so I wouldn't have to come home. I will just go from work into the city building, be there until whatever time of the night without dinner, sitting and waiting for your resolutions to come in, and then getting home past midnight. I know how that feels because I've done it plenty of times. So as someone from that perspective, I will dare anyone to say that they will have to limit my voice while you actually sit in these meetings, listening to the city council, to some city council people just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and justifying their votes, which you already know what the way they're going to vote on, but they just justifying it. And it really pains me. The part that pains me more is to have to sit there and endure people that just sits there to take the issues and turn them into a personal matter. So, and I'm not talking about personal experience. I'm talking about they take my time, they take our time to actually shift the focus in to their feelings. So if you're going to limit, or if you're even thinking of limiting the time of the speakers that are coming into these meetings, then perhaps you need to also think about limiting how we as a council member, how we as the people sitting on that chair also are more productive and use the time better. And if we have, how do we actually present our thoughts and in a way that is effective, to the point, and maximizes the time that we use. So the TFOX committee has worked very hard to put a bunch of recommendations together to improve the processes on the city council. I think the entire system needs to be changed, needs to be examined, needs to be tweaked in every single area. And we have to bring those council meetings to the people. We have to continue to have access online like we are having today. We should definitely have people on camera when they're speaking. So so their voices and their stories and their empathy just comes through, so that people can see who they're speaking with. And we need to pass COVID, once we are all ready to get back into community connections, we need to bring the council to the people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your time's up. Okay, so we're gonna have Freedom Action now come. Thank you everybody actually for answering the questions, taking your time to really speak. We're gonna have Freedom Action now come and talk about their campaigns and things that they're leading to. Manga's gonna come.
Hey y'all, wow, this has been an amazing forum to sit in on. And I want to thank all the candidates again for coming out for this co-hosted event with Freedom Inc. that we're doing. Again, my name is Manka. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm representing Freedom Action Now tonight. And before, I just want to speak a little bit more about FAN and give the candidates a moment to gather their thoughts before they do their closing statements. So I'm going to go ahead and try sharing my screen so that you all can kind of see like some visuals of what I'm talking about. So let me see. I think this is it. Oh, I guess I don't have permission to share it. Janae or Ananda, can one of y'all share while I talk? Great, thank you. I was like, I knew something like this will happen. So yeah, a little bit more about Freedom Action Now. Who we are. So Freedom Action Now is a Black and Southeast Asian Wisconsin-based political organization creating change for most impacted communities through voter education, leadership development, community organizing, and policy advocacy. What we do, through our organizing model of education, policy development, and advocacy, and accountability, we move individuals into action in service of collective power building. We intentionally nurture the leadership of survivors so that we may build powerful movements equipped to challenge the intentional patriarchy and white supremacy inherent in our current political system. Why and how we do it? We know that gender-based violence is not an accident or a crime of passion. It is a tool of patriarchy, an oppressive system used to control and exploit women, youth, and LGBTQIA+ folks. We must have a scientific approach to dismantling it if we're ever to be truly free. Building the individual and collective power of those most impacted creates and secures healthy, thriving communities. Our vision is to advance the feminist abolitionist agenda through which survivors of gender-based violence are the sheroes in the ongoing struggle for liberation. With the power to govern, create policies, and shift the material conditions that impact their daily lives. Our collective freedom is our ultimate goal. So just to list out some of our goals, to educate, activate, and mobilize progressive survivors of gender-based violence to engage in collective decision-making and policy fights / advocacy on a statewide level, not just locally. 2, to conceptualize and develop policies that address the needs of our communities. And 3, to build bold, new forms of self-governance that are legitimate in the eyes of our people. So how can you get involved? We'll be building out a survivors council this year. And that's for women, youth, queer, and queer Black and Southeast Asian folks here in Madison and across the state. We'll have a general membership where you can share and like our actions and our events, but also make phone calls to legislatures and support the policies that we put out. We'll have a group for co-conspirators and allies to do the work within their own communities around these key issues of survivorship and the way that Black and Southeast Asian folks are policed, and also to help us fundraise for the organization as well. And then also like donating, like these are all the ways that you can get involved. And you see on the bottom of the screen, our Facebook and our Instagram handle is the same. It's just at Freedom Action Now. And then for Twitter, it's actually Freedom Act Now. So thank y'all again for your time. And I'm gonna hand it back over to the wonderful Freedom Inc. staff and to the candidates to close out with your final words.
Hi, everyone. I'm sure you weren't expecting me to go first. My laptop is about to die and I don't have a charger. So if I go out, I will upload the rest of my comments to Facebook. But I just want to start by saying thank you for rocking with us. It's been 2 hours now. And I know that there's been a lot of forums and opportunities to get in touch with us. So thank you. Our activism, our work does not stop with this forum. So please feel free to check all of our websites out to learn more about us. Tomorrow marks 2 weeks from the general election, and we know that we have a historic number of BIPOC candidates running. I thank Freedom Inc. I believe that all of us on this call tonight have been endorsed. Freedom Inc. and Freedom Action Now, I'm sorry. I thank FAN for your endorsement and support because I wore my shirt on purpose. It's Stand with Black Women. Having this forum, hosting us tonight and asking these important questions are just a platform that I know all of us will continue to lean in and enhance. I'm really blessed to have such a team that is bringing diverse perspectives, not only to my campaign, so with many intersectional identities. I'm a lifelong Madisonian. I'm invested in this community, and I truly care about making a community where everyone can thrive. And what that means is standing with Black women, standing with non-binary folks, standing with transgender folks, standing with everyone who is a Madisonian, because we all have a right to thrive. And we have collective power. Let's continue coming together. Let's use this opportunity of historic proportions to bring these perspectives to the Common Council so we can finally start being about the change so many of us say that is coming. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are here and it's time. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for your interest and engagement in this election. And thank you for your vote for J.L. Curry for District 16 on April 6th, Tuesday, April 6th. You still have time to request your absentee ballot. Thank you all. And thank you to the co-panelists, Jeanette, Tessa, Brandy. And me. Much appreciation. And my 12-year-old, Zoe. Thank you and good night, you all.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Elections, as folks have said, is April 6th. District 14, I represent the people. And I know that for folks, it can be, let's just say, a new paradigm, a new paradigm in the in creation, right, or something like that. I'm saying that because I feel like people, we say on one end that we want change, we say that we're down for the movement, we say that we're down for change and transparency and integrity and action, and then when we get an opportunity, sometimes we back away. So I'm just going to encourage us to sit in our discomfort. You may have been watching this and you're like, oh, that didn't feel good when someone said this or they said that, or, you know, I'm not sure about immigrant laws or rules or helping them out. There's something about it that's not sitting well with me when they say Black Lives Matter. or centering those who are most impacted. How does that affect me? How would that affect my concerns with what's happening in my community? Property taxes, buses, sidewalks, plowing, garbage. And it might come up for you, like we're talking about these bigger things, but can we, or are we interested in supporting all the people, all of our constituents? And I'm just going to say yes, because you can't support. The whole conversation really is embedded in this idea that we have to move from the status quo way of doing things, where we support and advocate and listen to a small subset of our community, versus taking in and creating opportunity for us to engage more of our communities, right? And specifically those that are most impacted or disproportionately impacted by policies around housing, mental wellness, policing, services, community supports, how we fund community nonprofits and which nonprofits we support. We have to get in the habit of building capacities in our nonprofits, folks who are showing up every single day. And a lot of times, reaching in their own pockets or not paying themselves, or they're not able to be well because they're doing 10 positions, right? So I say all this to say is, let's get used to getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that is where the work lies, is us being uncomfortable in communication and conversation and in centering those who are most vulnerable. So thank you again for showing up. Get your absentee ballots in. Early voting ends April 3rd. You are in my district if you're somewhere on the South Side, so make sure you look it up. We will be out canvassing every weekend leading up. We do phone banking Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We need lots of help. We need to make about 2,000 calls, so join us. I also need donations, so join me. brandyformadison.com is my website, brandyformadison.com. My Facebook is Brandy for Madison. I'll see you guys at the polls, and on Wednesday there's another forum, so I'll see you soon. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for Freedom Inc. for putting together this lovely panel, and for the very thoughtful questions from Freedom Inc. and from the community members that are spending their wonderful Monday night with us. I think that when we look forward, we are talking about big changes, right? So many of us that are running for city council want to fundamentally transform the way our city works. And we have to understand that that's going to take time and energy, and it's going to take a lot of community support. It's going to take a lot of meetings, a lot of listening, a lot of out in the street to push Madison. We saw that in this last year, protests in the streets got things, right? The Freedom Inc. and Youth Squad going to the school board and turning out in the streets and going to their houses got the cops out of schools. And we need public officials who will be sympathetic and champion what the people want to see. But we can only go so far unless we have community support behind us. So it's all about finding out what communities most desperately need and getting them the resources and listening to them and bringing that voice into city council. So those are the reasons I'm running. That's what I'm hoping to do. And I'm going to learn so much from people at Freedom Inc., from people in the community, about how to bring everyone to the table and how to have those conversations and how to make sure that we're working towards a more just Madison. So thank you all for your time. If you want to know more about my platform, my running, or if you live in my district, go to my website, tessaforddistrict12.com. And thank you so much. I hope you have a great evening.
As you're muted, Yannette.
I swear I did not mute myself. Here we go. So thank you to Freedom Inc. and thank you to Freedom Action Now for having this forum. Thank you for everyone that decided to spend some time here with us tonight. Of all of us, again, the elephant in the room, I am the only white person on this forum. So it's sorry, you know what I mean. So I am the only white straight person on this forum. Yes, I am Puerto Rican. I do come with my own experiences. I am not an immigrant. I am a privileged person, and I am very privileged to be sitting here right now. And I totally understand that, and I own it. So I want to be able to serve people like you, people that really needs my help. People in this city are struggling right now. COVID-19 has been extremely devastating, and I need your support. I need your guidance in order for me to serve you better. I need you to allow me to trust me with your voices, and allow me to bring them with me to the table. So I am super excited to run for District 10. I am so overwhelmed and touched by the power that the people that are coming with me that are here on this forum. And I am looking forward to continue to learn, to continue to grow, to continue to make Madison a city that is the best place to live for everyone, not just for a section of people. So please join the campaign. Please get more information in my website, janetformadison.com. Volunteer, donate, whatever, in any capacity that you can. Request a yard sign if you're in my district. In any capacity that you can help us get our names out there, we'll really appreciate it. And please do know that I am here again to learn and to be guided by your voices and by the needs of the people that need us the most. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Great forum, y'all. We appreciate all the questions we got submitted. We appreciate all the candidates taking their time to speak with us, and yeah, it was decent. Any closing words? Oh yes, to reemphasize, Freedom Inc. is a nonpartisan organization. They do not endorse candidates. If you want to get more political, check out Freedom Action Now. They endorse candidates, and on their social media, they recently talked about the candidates they will be endorsing.